My parents paid for my sister's rent while I was homeless, so I moved in with a friend. Built a business and blocked them when they asked for help. I'm a 27-year-old guy, and I've always been the afterthought in my family. Not the disappointment exactly, just the one who never mattered enough to notice. Growing up, my sister Emily was the sun around which our whole house revolved. If she wanted something, my parents moved heaven and earth to make it happen. New clothes for every season, a shiny car on her 16th birthday, and even a paid trip to Italy when she graduated high school. Meanwhile, I was told to be independent, like it was some badge of honor. Birthdays meant hand-me-downs or life lessons about hard work. I remember asking my dad once, "Why does Emily get everything?" He didn't even look up from his paper. "Because she needs more support. You're stronger." That line stuck with me for years. "You're stronger" sounded like a compliment. But really, it was just an excuse to ignore me. I worked part-time all through college stocking shelves. Delivering pizza, fixing computers, anything to pay my tuition and rent. Every time I called home, my mom's voice would light up, until she realized it was me, not Emily. Then it was the usual, "Make sure you're saving." Dear followed by "Emily's doing so well in her psychology program. We're so proud of her." Still, I kept my head down. I thought if I worked hard enough, if I proved myself, maybe they'd finally see me. Maybe one day I'd walk into the house and my dad would say, "Son, I'm proud of you." But deep down, I knew better. In my family, love was a currency and I'd never been worth the investment. And yet, a part of me still believed that one day I'd earn it. I just didn't realize how far I'd have to fall first after college. I finally landed a job in another city, a small IT position that barely covered my rent, but it was mine. I thought I was finally starting my own life, independent from my family's favoritism and constant comparisons. Emily, of course, had her own apartment, fully paid for by mom and dad. Every time I called home, I could hear her in the background, laughing about some new designer jacket or weekend getaway. And my parents? They'd beam about her accomplishments, but barely asked how. I was holding up. The first crack came when my company downsized. My job disappeared overnight, leaving me scrambling. I called my parents, hoping for a bit of guidance, or even a place to crash temporarily, but their responses were icy. "We can't help you this time. You're a grown man. You need to handle your life," my dad said. Meanwhile, they wired Emily another month of rent without hesitation. My chest tightened. I wasn't asking for a handout, I just wanted the same consideration they gave my sister. I moved back home, couch surfing in the living room, while Emily's old room stayed untouched, polished like a shrine for her return visits. Every day I'd see her clothes in the closet, her favorite chair in the corner, and it felt like a silent accusation, "You're not enough." One evening, as I was unpacking a box of my things, Mom came in with a casual smile. "Emily's having a rough month at work. We just sent her some extra money for rent," she said, as if it were normal. I wanted to scream, but I only nodded. I was too exhausted, too hurt, too small. I lay on the couch that night, staring at the ceiling, thinking about how unfair it all was. Every fiber in me ached, not just from losing my job, but from realizing that the family I trusted, the people who were supposed to be my foundation, didn't see me as worthy. And I knew that this was only the beginning, because nothing was going to get easier from here. After a few weeks of searching for work, the tension at home became unbearable. My parents' polite indifference had turned into thinly veiled impatience. Every question I asked, every concern I voiced, was met with sighs, eye rolls, or, worst of all, silence. One night, after hearing Emily's latest brag about her new apartment paid for in full by Mom and Dad, I snapped. "Why does she get everything while I'm barely surviving?" I asked, my voice cracking. My dad looked at me with that familiar mix of irritation and disappointment. "Because you need to learn responsibility," he said. "We've done enough for you already." I felt something inside me break that night. The apartment I had been forced to leave behind, the job I'd lost, the couch I was sleeping on, it all combined into a crushing weight. I packed a small backpack with the few belongings I could carry and left. No goodbyes, no pleading, just needed to breathe. The streets were colder than I expected. I wandered through parking lots, trying to find a place to sleep without being noticed. I ended up in my car, the seats folded down as my new bed. The night air smelled of rain-soaked asphalt and exhaust fumes. Every honk and distant siren reminded me how alone I truly was. I lay there staring at the ceiling of the car roof, thinking about everything I had done for my family, how I had worked, struggled, and sacrificed. And yet, they didn't care. My stomach growled. My back ached. But worse than anything, the loneliness gnawed at me. For the first time, I truly felt invisible, not just overlooked, but utterly irrelevant. Somewhere deep inside, a flicker of determination sparked. I couldn't stay here forever. But the question lingered, heavy and unyielding. Where do I even begin when everyone you trust has turned their back on you? And in that moment, I realized I had reached my lowest point. I was barely keeping it together when my phone buzzed in the car. It was Jason, an old friend I hadn't spoken to in months. "Hey man, I heard about what happened. If you need a place to crash, you can stay at mine for a while," he said casually. But there was a warmth in his voice that felt like a lifeline. I hesitated for a moment, pride warred with desperation, but I finally admitted I had nowhere else to go. Jason's apartment was cramped, nothing like the home I'd lost. But it was clean and warm, and most importantly, I felt safe for the first time in weeks. I slept on his futon that night, but I didn't sleep well. The memories of my parents' indifference haunted me. Still, hearing the soft hum of the heater and feeling the mattress under me reminded me that someone out there actually cared. Over the next few days, we caught up. Jason had been working on an idea for a small online business, but didn't have the technical skills to execute it fully. I could really use a hand with logistics and website management. "You're good with that stuff, right?" he asked. I nodded, feeling a spark I hadn't felt in months. For the first time since I left home, I imagined a future that didn't involve my parents' approval or their judgment. That evening, as we stayed up late discussing plans, I noticed the determination in my own reflection on his laptop screen. There was no luxury, no safety net, no parental backing, just two guys willing to grind for something better. And for the first time in a long while, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: hope. But even with this small glimmer, I couldn't shake the nagging thought that my family's shadow still loomed over me. Would I ever truly escape their influence? Or was this just the calm before another storm? I didn't know it yet, but this was the beginning of my climax, the start of a quiet, burning revenge. Jason and I dove headfirst into the business. We decided to sell customizable tech accessories online cases. Chargers, little gadgets people didn't know they needed until they saw them. Our first few weeks were brutal. We survived on instant noodles, scrounged for free Wi-Fi at cafes, and worked from his tiny living room with wires and packages strewn everywhere. I had never worked this hard, not even during college, and yet it felt different. This wasn't about proving my parents wrong. It was about proving to myself that I could survive, and maybe even thrive without them. Every evening, while Jason checked orders and updated the website, I processed inventory, packaged shipments, and replied to customers. The hum of the printer and the click of my keyboard became oddly comforting. I could see progress, all tangible proof that I was building something real. Meanwhile, messages from my parents started filtering in. "Emily said hi. You should check on her. I hope you're getting on your feet." Their concerns sounded hollow, like a reminder of what they always prioritized. I ignored most of it, but the sting never fully faded. Then one afternoon, a small batch of our products sold out within hours. Jason and I stared at the screen, disbelief written all over our faces. "We're actually doing this," he whispered. And for the first time since sleeping in my car, I felt a pulse of pride I hadn't felt in years. Every hardship, every insult, every cold shoulder from my family seemed to fuel me further. But as my confidence grew, so did the quiet ache of betrayal. I thought about the countless nights I had begged for a little support, the months I spent invisible while Emily thrived effortlessly. That anger, carefully stoked, became my fuel. I was beginning to realize that this this business. This grind was more than survival. It was my way out. But the question lingered in the back of my mind: would success be enough to finally silence them? Or would their shadow always follow me? I didn't have the answer yet, but I knew I was ready to find out. Months of grinding finally started to pay off. One morning, I woke up to an email notification from TikTok. A popular reviewer had featured one of our tech accessories, and suddenly, orders were flooding in. Jason and I stared at the screen, disbelief mixing with adrenaline. We scrambled to process shipments. Our tiny living room turned into a chaotic warehouse of boxes, bubble wrap, and shipping labels. It wasn't glamorous, but for the first time in my life, I felt the raw thrill of accomplishment that wasn't dictated by my parents' approval. We upgraded our workspace to a small storage unit nearby, each corner stacked with inventory. I bought myself a second-hand laptop, a decent jacket, even a pair of shoes that weren't on sale. The little victories felt monumental, and every time I glanced at my phone and ignored another guilt-tripping text from my mom, a quiet satisfaction settled in. They had spent so many years building Emily's life while I struggled, but now I was building my own on my terms. Then, just as I started to feel the first whispers of peace, a message came through from my mom. "Can you send Emily some money for her rent? She's having a rough month." I froze, staring at the text like it had burned itself into my screen. My chest tightened. They wanted my help not out of love, not out of care, but because their priorities remained the same. Emily. First. ALWAYSI typed a reply and deleted it before sending. My fingers trembled. Rage and disbelief battled inside me. But there was also a calm clarity. I no longer needed their validation, their approval, or their financial support. I had my own victories now. And yet, as I stared at the screen, I realized something. Helping them now would undo everything I'd fought to build. And that's when I made my first conscious decision to put myself first, no matter the cost. I took a deep breath and typed back a simple, firm reply. I can't help Emily this month. I'm still rebuilding myself. Didn't mince words, didn't apologize. It was the first time I'd ever put myself ahead of my family, and I felt both relief and an unfamiliar sting of fear. Almost immediately, the backlash hit. My mom called, her voice quivering but sharp, trying every tactic she knew: guilt, shame, and even feigned tears. "Family helps family," she said. "We've always been there for you. How can you turn your back now?" Then my dad joined in, his tone laced with disappointment. "You're being selfish. We raised you better than this." I could hear Emily in the background chiming in like a rehearsed script. "I can't believe you'd let Mom and Dad down. After everything they've done for us." My hand shook as I put the phone down. Their words weren't just attacks, they were a reminder that they'd never really seen me, and probably never would. I walked to the window, staring out at the city skyline, trying to calm the storm inside. The apartment felt smaller than ever, but I also realized something crucial. Their disapproval didn't matter anymore. For years, I had chased a recognition that would never come. Now, I had a business, a partner, and a life I was building from nothing. Even so, the emotional wound burned. I thought about the countless nights I'd cried quietly, hoping they'd notice, hoping they'd care, hoping they'd step in when I was down. And now, years later, the same pattern played out. Emily first. Me last. I sat down on the edge of the futon, the weight of both anger and liberation pressing on me. Blocking their calls crossed my mind, and for the first time, I realized I might actually do it. But could I truly cut them out, or was it too soon? After the confrontation, I didn't speak to my parents for weeks. Instead, I threw myself entirely into the business. Jason and I worked longer hours than ever, fine-tuning our website, sourcing better products, and building a small team to handle orders. Each shipment we processed, each satisfied customer email, felt like a quiet victory over the years of neglect. For the first time, my achievements weren't measured against Emily or validated by my parents. They were mine. Our efforts started paying off in a way I hadn't dared hope for. Sales were growing steadily, and one afternoon, we received a feature request from a local entrepreneur magazine. A photographer came by, setting up lights and cameras in our cramped storage space. I watched as Jason and I posed awkwardly, boxes of products surrounding us, and felt an unfamiliar pride swell. Here I was, someone who had slept in a car weeks ago, now being recognized for my own grit. But amid the excitement, the thought of my parents' absence lingered. Part of me wanted to show them, to make them see that I didn't need their validation anymore. Yet another part felt anger bubbling beneath the surface, anger at the years of favoritism, the invisible neglect, the constant comparisons. I realized that this wasn't just about financial independence. It was about reclaiming my self-worth. That night, I stayed up late with Jason, going over our plans for expansion. I felt alive in a way I hadn't in years, and the seed of confidence grew steadily. I could almost see the path ahead, bright and wide, unlike the narrow, suffocating halls of my childhood home. But as I finally leaned back in my chair, exhausted yet exhilarated, a tiny notification pinged on my phone. It was my mom, and I knew immediately that my past wasn't done with me yet. I hadn't spoken to my parents in months, and I thought that silence had finally brought me peace. But then the call started, first a text from my mom. "Saw your feature online. Proud of you, son. Can we talk?" Then a voicemail from Dad, his voice unsteady, pretending to be casual, but laced with urgency. And Emily, she commented on my post, all smiles and emojis, "So happy for my little brother. Can't wait to catch up." It was staged, calculated, and I could feel it through the screen. I ignored the messages at first, telling myself they were harmless, just empty gestures of pride. But when my mom called again, pleading, I realized their motives weren't innocent. They were in trouble. Dad's business had gone under, and Emily's lavish lifestyle was catching up with her. Suddenly, the dynamic had shifted. They were no longer untouchable. They needed me, sitting in my apartment, surrounded by boxes and computers that now symbolized my independence. I felt a mix of vindication and caution. I had clawed my way out of the despair they left me in, and now, for the first time, they were vulnerable. It was a surreal reversal. I could almost feel the power shift. The scales of our family balance tilting in my favor, but old wounds don't heal quickly. And seeing their names pop up on my phone stirred up everything I had buried the nights on the couch. The rejections, the relentless favoritism. Could I really face them without letting the past consume me? As I stared at the screen, the words from my mom blinked at me. "We need your help. Please, son." I realized this was the moment everything I had worked for would be tested. They invited me to dinner, trying to act casual like nothing had ever happened. I arrived at the restaurant with a knot in my stomach, the memories of being ignored, belittled, overlooked heavy on my shoulders. Mom smiled through tears. Dad tried to project authority. Emily sat there, avoiding eye contact, pretending everything was normal. As soon as the appetizers arrived, my mom started, "We're in trouble, and we need your help," she said, her voice quivering. Dad nodded, adding, "We've done everything we can, but now it's up to you. You're our only hope." Emily chimed in, hesitating. "Yeah, we don't know what to do." My chest tightened. I had imagined this moment countless times, but nothing could have prepared me for the raw audacity of their performance. I stayed calm, voice steady, recounting every time I had struggled while they watched Emily thrive. "You ignored me when I had no place to stay. You sent her money while I slept in my car, and now you expect me to fix your problems?" I paused, letting the words sink in. The table went silent. I could see the shame flicker across their faces, but also the calculation how to twist the situation back in their favor. I realized that their concern wasn't for me or even for Emily. They just wanted someone to bail them out. And in that moment, I understood that my family hadn't changed. They were the same people who had made me feel invisible for 27 years. The waiter arrived with our entrees, but I didn't care. My decision was clear. I wouldn't let their manipulation pull me back into their orbit. I had built my life from the ground up, and nothing, no guilt, no tears. No old family dynamics was going to make me abandon that hard-won independence. And as I stood up from the table, I realized this would be the moment I finally reclaimed my power. After that dinner, the messages came non-stop. My phone buzzed, constantly apologies, guilt trips, desperate pleas. Emily tried to text me first, pretending she wanted to reconnect, sprinkling in reminders of family loyalty, and subtly slipping in, "Can you just help me out this once?" I read each one carefully, my thumb hovering over the screen, my chest tight. For years I had craved their attention, their approval, and their love. But now I saw it for what it really was: conditional, manipulative, and completely self-serving. One evening, I sat on my apartment couch, staring at the messages. It felt surreal, almost cinematic, like the universe had given me a front-row seat to the same family that had abandoned me, now desperate at my doorstep. I thought back to the nights I spent in my car, the weeks of being ignored, the constant comparisons to Emily. I felt a surge of anger. Yes, but also clarity. I finally understood that cutting them off wasn't cruel, it was survival, it was justice, and it was finally about me, so I did it. One by one, I blocked my mom, my dad, and Emily on every platform, every number, every possible way to reach me. My phone felt lighter. My chest felt lighter. For the first time in my life, I wasn't running from something, I was standing firmly in my own power. I allowed myself a moment to breathe, to exhale decades of frustration and heartbreak. And in the silence that followed, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: peace. Not the hollow peace of ignoring reality, but the deep, unshakable peace of knowing I would never allow anyone to treat me like I was invisible again. I had finally drawn the line, and this time, no one could cross it. Months later, life felt completely different. The business Jason and I had built was thriving beyond what I could have imagined. We opened a second branch, hired employees who reminded me of the struggle I'd been through, finally had the stability I'd fought so hard to achieve. Every day I woke up in my own apartment, made my own coffee, and didn't have to explain myself to anyone. Success no longer felt like a distant dream, it was tangible, earned, and entirely mine. I occasionally glimpsed Emily's posts online. She was still flaunting her lifestyle, still pretending to be untouchable. But the old sting? It wasn't there anymore. Instead, I felt something else: calm. My parents' absence in my life wasn't a loss, it was freedom. Every insult they had ever thrown, every night I'd spent feeling small, had fueled me to get here. And I realized that my happiness, my peace, my success, none of it depended on them sometimes. At night, I think back to the nights in the car, the endless rejection, the hollow comfort of an apartment that wasn't mine. I remember the anger, the tears, the ache of being invisible. But now, I can smile quietly, knowing I survived, I built, and I thrived. I didn't need to prove anything to anyone anymore. Not to my parents. Not to Emily. Not to anyone who ever doubted me. And as I sit in my office, watching my team pack orders, listening to the hum of a business I created from nothing, I finally understand the truth. Family isn't always blood. Family is the people who show up, who fight with you, who never make you feel invisible. And for me, I've finally found it. I used to think being forgotten by my parents was the end of me. Now, it was the beginning of everything.